It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
Wow, are we going to have some fun today or what? Got a lot of stuff to go over. First, update on solar panels. For the entire year, I did get about what the installation company predicted, maybe even a few kilowatt hours more, so that's cool. And I think I may have mentioned that before, but I just got my last electric bill, or my most recent electric bill, because the word last is kind of tricky. And it ran pretty close to early middle of December to early middle of January, which is kind of the 4 weeks that straddle the winter solstice. And as you might expect, I did not create anywhere near the amount of energy in the month as one does in every other fucking month of the year. And that's even with very little snow coverage. So far this year, where I happen to live, hasn't had a lot of snow or deep snow, and we've had several bright days, which have helped. So with my pretty big size system, I think the kilowatt hours produced in that month was pretty close to 350 kilowatt hours. The average American house might use 800 to 1,000 kilowatt hours. So it could be close to one half of the power that you used. It was not one half. My electric cost is about 12 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on how you calculate it. And like many things, it's never that fucking simple. The shortcut is at least 10 cents a kilowatt hour, but my average cost is 12 and a half. But there are some fixed costs that I'm going to pay as long as I use electricity from the power company. So let's call it 11 cents a kilowatt hour just for laughs. 350, of course, would be $35 at 10% or 10 cents, plus another $3.50. So $38.50. Ooh, $38.50. But that's to be expected. Back in May and June, I think the kilowatt hours produced were something close to 1,800. 5 times bigger, give or take. I'm rounding math off the top of my head, about 5 times bigger. And not only equal to or slightly more than what I used, but a lot of electricity. So the season is the biggest driver. You're never going to get anything close to May and June in December and January, unless you are probably really close to the equator. Then it's all going to be pretty equal. Of course, south of the equator, you'd have to invert it, but you understand. You get it. So solar panels are working good. My car had the battery replaced. That's still working good. Today in the show, as far as show content, I have a last minute little diatribe, I guess, that I just recorded right before the intro and the outro about follow up on annuities and an annuity platform and the call that I got. And I don't want to spoil it. You're going to enjoy it. The other thing, of course, I have is a interview with Jeff, one of the staff attorneys at American Atheists, and we talk about a couple of lawsuits and the upcoming conference this Easter, which I think I'm 90%. 90% I'm going to go. Plus, I think my ticket is free because I'm some special tiered member for having given dollars over the years to American Atheists. So that's kind of cool, but I think it's too far to drive. I could toy with the idea, but that's a lot of time that I have other shit to do other than just sitting and driving. And of course, there's added time if I take my electric car. It can do it. It just, you got to plan. You got to think a little harder. If you're on the West Coast or in New England, it's probably hella easier to have an electric car. Or, to be brutally honest, it would be easier if I had a Tesla, but that is changing. It's just that Illinois is behind, and probably the hardest part of my journey is the first 2 to 3 hours south out of the Chicago suburbs, because if I go south on I-57, the next place with a high-speed charger for a non-Tesla car is Effingham. It's one of those cities with the giant crossbody interstate fuckers. Anyway, so that's a long haul to go. If I go over to Indiana towards Indianapolis, the first charger is on the extreme far southwest side of Indianapolis, and that's a pretty good one. But anyway, enough about that. So we'll talk about American Atheists and their conference, and I also have a little segment on Schwab and some updated information. And I think this is new compared to the information I got before. I'd rather err on being redundant than keeping you out of the loop. So as I learn new things about the transition of Polaris, my business, from TD Ameritrade to Schwab, and Schwab, of course, bought TD Ameritrade, so far it's gone quite well. I'm very pleased with the communication and the direct, apparently honest approach of providing information to advisors. So that's kind of delightfully surprising. It's not been my experience with other times when one company has bought another or they've merged to maximize and leverage their potentialities or whatever they want to say. So that's kind of cool. The other segment I've recorded and it got bumped. I'm so sorry. I know there are people waiting for this. My apologies. The next show, I won't bump it again. The next show, I've already recorded it, is the 16 calendar year review of how theoretical investments could have done over the last 16 years. And there's 4 different ways I look at the numbers. There's using only the total stock market index fund from Vanguard, using the Vanguard Target Date Fund 2015 index fund, the three-legged stool model, which is using 3 different Vanguard index funds: total domestic stock, total international stock, and total bond fund. And then there's the Polaris plan. And I compare those 4 different methodologies and how they appear to have done with me making up the numbers and being advised that this has not been audited or double verified, and that you really shouldn't put a whole lot of value on what I tell you in that segment. But it's just something to think about and talk about how things work. So since I already have a lot of content for this episode, I'll stop wasting too much of your time. We'll do our quick little break and get into the really good stuff.
We do not accept that there is a God or gods, personal or in nature, manifesting himself, herself, itself, or themselves in any way. We do not accept the idea of heaven, hell, perdition, purgatory, or any other of the stages reached by escalator going either up or down. We do not accept that there is any life after death. We do not accept miracles. We do not accept the idea of angels, spooks, goblins, gremlins, leprechauns, elves, or souls. We simply do not accept that anyone at any time was ever a prophet of God who did not exist or which did not exist. We do not accept any so-called holy books as guides to life, and that includes the Bible, the Torah, the Veda, the Koran, the Upanishads, the Awaspi, they invent them constantly. We don't care whether that book was written by anyone in history, in any age in history, whether that was written by Moses, Mary Baker Eddy, Paul, Joseph Smith, Mohammed, Gautama Buddha, or the fickle finger of fate.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
This little mini segment, Investing Skeptically segment, is on Charles Schwab and their pricing guide. I was able to get a copy of this document for January of 2022. And it specifically says that it's public information, so I'm not getting in trouble there. And it's for clients of independent investment advisors. And it covers a lot of different things and what they cost for you to do. And a few people have asked me, what will the costs be like when I move from TD Ameritrade to Schwab? Well, for the vast majority of things within a buck or two, it's either higher or lower for different things. Like you want sent something to you overnight, it's more expensive than regular mail. If you want to trade or buy a mutual fund, it might be free, it might have a cost, and the cost at Schwab is really similar to TD Ameritrade. So the short of it is that it's going to be fine. That's the really important thing for anyone who is considering hiring me in the future or is already a client. And this medium, of course, allows me to talk to a bunch of you all at one time. I'm sure you can find this document if you search with the Google, Charles Schwab, January 2022. Anyway, for clients of independent investment advisors, this is the Charles Schwab pricing guide. It also says that fees or trading costs might end up being lower for you if you actually do use an advisor, but they won't be higher than anything printed in this document. Of course, there's also a little disclaimer that they can update or revise this document at any time. So it won't be higher than what's shown in this document until they change the price in the document and issue a new document. So whatever. It's just, for general education. They've got a lot of information and pricing about trades, options, puts, calls, and all that stuff. I don't use that, so I'm not even going to really dig into that. It doesn't apply to me. One of the things here is, let's see, exchange listed securities per trade, electronic trades $0, broker assisted $25. So if you have some stock that you want to sell or some stock that you happen to want to buy, the trading cost might be $0. And as a regular listener, you should be concerned when something is $0 because you're still paying. You just don't see it. So, and this is one of the possible problems with ETFs, exchange traded funds. When you trade them, I think at TD Ameritrade, it was $0 also versus a fee for buying or selling a Vanguard index fund. There is a thing called the spread, which can be very small, but sometimes it's bigger. And the spread is the difference in the price between what you might pay and what the other person is selling it for. So an exchange traded fund changes hands on the public market. You're not actually buying it from Vanguard. You're buying it from someone who already owns shares of it. Now, Vanguard can issue additional shares from time to time, but you're buying shares and they might be willing to sell them for $24.50 a piece. And when you go to buy this ETF on the market, or if you ask me to buy them for you, it might be 10 cents higher per share. And so the broker, and this is not new. This has been around forever. The broker collects the spread as a way of generating income and revenue for doing the work. They don't do this for free. I hope you understand that. I hope that you understand that a business generally is not set up to do things for free. But when they tell you the trading cost is $0, the actual trading fee is $0, but the spread can be different. This is one of the, I think, a perk, particularly if you have a larger account at TD Ameritrade currently. It costs you, the investor, $24 to buy and or sell a Vanguard mutual fund, or add to or sell some of a Vanguard mutual fund, Vanguard index fund. And that's one of the reasons I try to keep those transactions low. But the nice thing is that when you pay that $24, that's it. If you're buying $1,000, that's kind of a painfully big number. When you're buying $50,000 or selling $20,000, $24 is nothing. And you might think, but Phil, I don't want to pay that $24. I want a free transaction, so let's use the ETF, the exchange traded fund. Well, the spread might be only pennies per share, but if there's enough shares, you could actually end up paying more without seeing it than what the $24 fee would have been. So just know that if you're looking at the transaction cost to buy or sell an ETF or a fund that's not Vanguard index funds, because Vanguard doesn't pay the kickbacks to either TD Ameritrade or Schwab, so Vanguard doesn't subsidize that. mutual funds that are in the, I don't know, the exclusive class or whatever, that are priority, that have zero transaction costs, that's zero transaction costs. At least it looks like it's zero. You're still paying it. Come on. You're still paying it. But what happens is the mutual fund company, like Fidelity, for example, would pay Schwab some money to facilitate that transaction. So it comes from Fidelity, not from you. And you might think, well, that's okay because Fidelity's paying it. Well, guess where the fuck they come up with the money? They pull it out of the mutual fund, and it's something that's not even shown as part of the expense ratio. So if it's a fund that's heavily transacted where people get in and out, you could end up paying multiples more than the $24, and you just don't see it because it's just part of the expense. Over-the-counter trades, Canadian stock market transactions. I don't really do that. Foreign stock transactions, I don't care. It doesn't do anything with that. Mutual funds, they have their no transaction fee funds. Like I said, the cost on that is zero as a reference to a fee, but you're paying it somehow, somewhere. Short-term redemption fee. This is, I think this is new. This is something that I don't think they had in general at TD Ameritrade. Short-term redemption fee. If you buy a mutual fund and then sell part of the mutual fund in less than 90 days, it's a $50 fee, $49.95, which is I'm fine with because we shouldn't be doing that. So it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect my clients. It doesn't affect anyone that generally follows the philosophy and the style of investing that I use because we're not doing that. Mutual fund transactions fees, it says 45, but the reduced transaction fee is 24, and that has asterisks. So I'm not sure which one applies to my clients yet. And of course, the person I talked to at Schwab said that that hasn't been resolved yet. So I don't know what that is, but it could be either $45 or $24 to buy and or sell a position in a Vanguard index fund, Vanguard mutual fund, because Vanguard, again, doesn't pay those things here. Well, let's see whether they've got information on options. Alternative pricing for options will not exceed the greater of $6.25 per contract, 2% of principal, or $43.95 minimum per leg. I don't do these things. But again, that's one of the things with options, puts, calls, all that kind of stuff. There's transaction costs on top of the risk that you're taking to doing those things. Then they go and talk about buying individual bonds, generally something I don't do, but a new client might come over with individual bond holdings that I generally recommend against. There's a whole section here about where Schwab may be involved with the initial offering of either stocks and or bonds. And when they are, again, the fee, the fee that you see is zero. So it doesn't cost you anything because the fee is built into the offering. Whole nother show topic possibility. But when a company goes public and the stock starts at $50 a share, the underwriting broker or broker dealer or underwriter, depending on how it's all set up, might get $3 per share. So out of a $45 stock, $3 a share, well, I picked stupid numbers. That could be like 6 or 7% right off the top you're paying, but it's not a transaction fee. See what I'm saying? It's built in. They're getting paid. They don't do this for free. Services, exchange fees. If you want them to send it to you overnight, like a check or something instead of in the regular mail, $8.50. Non-sufficient funds for returned item, $25. You know, a lot of little fees that you might have in your bank, but you get the idea. I think the most meaningful fee is the fee to buy or sell positions in a Vanguard fund, which will probably be around $24. Again, this is a year and a half from now, but I'm trying to share with you what I know when I learn it so that it's smoother for all of us, because I don't want to have 150 conversations about what the exact dollar fee is at Schwab. So there's some information about Schwab pricing that might affect any listener who uses Schwab, and might affect anyone who's a client or becomes a client when all of the TD Ameritrade stuff moves over to Schwab. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions.
We do not accept that there is now or has ever been a holy person, and that includes everyone from Mother Teresa to Moses to Jesus Christ. We call him JC. Mohammed, his daughter Fatima, the angel Moroni, the Pope, any Pope, all of the popes, any oracles, self-appointed or appointed by other persons, or elected by strange men in long red dresses. We do not accept that there is any efficacy in prayer. And we don't care whether they're said by your legislator, George Bush, yourself, myself, a priest, a rabbi, a minister, a guru, or even your mama. Atheists see all of this, first, as being totally subjective and going on only in your little heads, nowhere else. And secondly, we see it basically as simply being silly. We don't hate you. We think you're quite odd. But these are all very ancient, outmoded fables, and we no longer need to cling to them in our modern world. The most difficult thing in the world to do is to live in it. Just to get along with other people, to earn a living, to meet our basic needs. And we do not need encumbered by all of these ideas which bring you a sense of guilt, a sense of inadequacy, of impotence. We need a decent, modern, sophisticated, workable set of standards by which we can get along with ourselves and others.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
All right, next up we have Geoffrey Blackwell. He is the litigation counsel for American Atheists, and he has agreed to come on and talk about some legal cases that American Atheist is or was involved with. And of course, maybe we'll ask him a few questions about the upcoming Easter vacation. It's going to be a vacation for me, I hope. Convention. Jeff, how the hell are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Phil?
I am good, and as we talked in pre-show, I've been a little busier than I should be and a little distracted, but we're here now, we're doing our thing, and you get to promote your employer, American Atheists, and there's always, it seems like, always something that needs some legal representation or activity, or at least a letter to be written. Tell us, what is going on right now?
Sure. So in terms of the litigation side of the office, which is what I handle, we have 3 cases that are in active litigation right now. And I guess that's the best place to start because they're the most visible.
Yeah.
One that I've spent the last 4 or 5 days deeply enmeshed in is our case down in Houston, Texas. We're representing a student. We're representing someone who used to be a high school student and sat during the Pledge of Allegiance in high school, and Texas requires all students to recite both the Texas Pledge of Allegiance, the Pledge of Allegiance to the Texas flag and the Pledge of Allegiance to the U.S. flag. As it happens, I went to high school in Austin, Texas before 9/11, and it was after 9/11 that requirement was implemented by the statute. But a parent can opt their child out of that requirement, and our client's mother opted her out of it, and she received some negative treatment throughout high school, and we're working to help her enforce her rights. We're actually preparing to potentially go to trial soon, though there's a possibility that the other side will seek to have the Supreme Court take up the case. We'll see whether they take that step and then what the Supreme Court says. So that's the one that's...
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
That's horrible. I always see that as if I force you, if I compel you to pledge your allegiance to something, to anything, if I compel you by law, by force, by punishment, and then you say, okay, I don't want the punishment, so I'll pledge to be loyal to the flag, for example, the whole thing becomes bullshit to me because you don't really have a choice in the matter. So is there some federal regulations and statutes on this where you can't compel someone to stand? Is that the case?
So, yes, there are a number of there are a number of Supreme Court cases that have dealt with the Pledge of Allegiance and students' First Amendment rights in general, free speech rights. There are plenty that talk about students' free exercise and Establishment Clause rights too, but this involves free speech. The big one is West Virginia Board of Education v. Barnett, a case from 1943, wherein I believe a Jehovah's Witness family challenged the pledge requirement because they don't believe in doing that. And the Supreme Court was about as emphatic as the Supreme Court ever is in saying that no, the schools cannot compel you to profess beliefs in the realm of patriotism, nationalism, religion, those kinds of things. That's a violation of students' free speech rights. And our case is a little interesting because not only did she sit during the pledge recitals every day, but the teacher who is the defendant in the case also required his class, after he was informed that she was exempt from being required to say the pledge, required his class to write the pledge, ostensibly as part of an exercise showing that sometimes things you learn by rote memorization you can't really reproduce in the moment. But statements he made immediately after that made it very clear that really his intent was to inculcate his personal beliefs about patriotism and that kind of thing in his students. And that is a no-no.
Yeah, and also it sounds just like a dick move, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, there's probably nothing you do that's legal that penalizes someone for being a jerk, but that's too bad in this case anyway. So, and of course, the routine practice of law, as you mentioned earlier, a former student. So by the time you get appropriate level of redress, the offense is no longer continuing because the student has. Well, did she graduate or did she just leave the school?
She graduated.
Yeah.
She's in college now and pursuing potentially going to law school herself. So somehow this process is not dissuaded.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the weird things like this motivate people. You never know.
Very true. Very true. But you're exactly right. She has graduated, and usually the way, not to get too lost in the legal weeds, but when they're essentially, I'm simplifying things drastically. So if there are other lawyers in the audience who want to correct me, understand that I'm being very broad. But there's generally three things that a court can do. A court can issue what's called a declaratory judgment that just says what X person did was legally wrong. They can issue an injunction, which is a court order directing someone to do or not do some act. Those are sort of both forward-looking remedies. They're called equitable remedies. And they are when there is ongoing conduct and something that simply providing money in a lawsuit isn't going to fix the problem, which is what we would generally pursue where you have a student who is still in school, still being subjected to whatever policies or practices that a school district or a particular school or administrator might have. Those are the kinds of things that we would pursue. In this case, because of the long-term negative treatment she received, She has suffered some essentially psychiatric and mental harms as a result of this.
Right.
Long-lasting things that require therapy and that kind of stuff. So in this case, we are seeking damages. Normally, if there aren't damages, once an act is over, once you're never going to be subjected to whatever bad act again, the court isn't going to issue an injunction, because what would be the point?
Yeah.
If you're never going to go back to that school, why tell the school to do anything with regard to you?
Well, and of course, if I get legal things wrong here, just correct me. But the long-term harm also establishes the standing that she has a position. She has some harm that is still ongoing, because, like you said, if you left school, you can't say you're harming me anymore, because they're not doing anything to harm you, but you still have standing because there are long-term effects from being treated poorly. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Ish, kind of.
Yes. And that's part of the problem with a lot of civil rights litigation. High school lasts, in general, 4 years, and this litigation that we're in, we are preparing to go to trial now, 4 years after we filed this lawsuit. And so let's say something happens at your school where you want to challenge a policy that you learn about, or that you learn about at your student school, when the student is a freshman. If they graduate before it's resolved, that could render the case moot and be grounds to dismiss it. Now, there are ways around that. There's something called nominal damages you can ask for, which is basically if a court or a jury finds in your favor, then the defendant has to pay you $1. That is nominal damages. And thanks to a Supreme Court case just last year that I would be at pains to pronounce, something along those lines. Nominal damages does allow you to continue a case after it would normally be ended in those circumstances, because you're no longer subject to their control. And I've drifted off from where I was going with that.
That's all good. I'm just kind of scrolling through news from American Atheists, and there's one here about the Supreme Court and the Protestant flag in government buildings. Is that something you feel comfortable discussing?
Sure. The case is Shirtliff v. City of Boston. It was actually, there were oral arguments at the Supreme Court, virtually at the Supreme Court yesterday morning. The case involves a flagpole that stands outside of City Hall in Boston. The city has a practice of flying flags of various nationalities and causes and things like that the city supports, in conjunction with visits of foreign dignitaries, days that have been declared as, Portuguese Recognition Day or something like that by either the state or Boston City Council. And for Constitution Day several years ago, a Christian organization called Camp Constitution requested to fly the Protestant or Christian flag.
Yeah.
It's a white flag with a blue square in the corner with a white cross in it, or a red cross?
Red cross.
Anyway, I don't have the image in front of me.
Yep.
And the city said, no, we're not going to fly a religious flag. We think that raises a number of problems. And the camp has brought this all the way to the Supreme Court, and it appears you can't draw solid conclusions from oral arguments, but the justices were, in general, there were some holdouts, but the justices in general were skeptical of the city's arguments that the flags flying from the top of that particular flagpole are the city speaking.
Yeah, it's not government endorsement.
The city has chosen to endorse a message.
Yeah.
If the justices decide that no, whatever flag that you authorize to fly there is not city speech, government speech, but instead the speech of private individuals, you can't engage in viewpoint discrimination, which is true. You can't in spaces for the exercise of expressive activity, public forums.
Right.
The government cannot engage in viewpoint discrimination. You can't
Which means
people based on what they're going to say.
Yeah, this group can petition or sign up and fly their flag, and the city will not be allowed to tell them no simply because it's a Christian flag. But that also means that someone in Boston can show up and do whatever the process is and request that the American Atheists flag be flown, and they would have to get the same treatment as the Christian organization, and then the city would fly the American Atheist flag. Is that a correct summary?
That is a very good summary, yes. And the concern is that if the court sides with Camp Constitution here, Shurtleff, the individual who runs the camp, what we're going to see is cities and towns around the country instituting policies that allow people to fly whatever flag they want from, apply to fly a flag outside of their particular city hall. And as a result, we'll constantly see Christian flags flying from city halls around the country, and various obstacles will be put in the way of those who would like to see atheist flags or minority flags, or just not see flags that aren't the city flags flying from those flagpoles.
Yeah, because if a city like Boston makes a rule that says anyone can apply, and then they can choose based on the most popular frequent request, that could be problematic, but it might work. Or they could draw a name out of a hat for any given day or week or whatever. And if 10 times as many Christians apply, then, it just happens to be the Christian flag all the time. Or they could say that they're fair and equal, but they keep all of the rules behind inside of a black box, so you don't know that they're denying atheists on purpose until you can show that.
Yeah, and actually, it's some of the same tactics that we have seen with, holiday displays in December, where they will institute various policies. We have X number of slots, and they are issued on a first come first served basis. And by the way, we're not going to necessarily tell you when every single application came in, or we'll pull them from a hat, literally. Those have. There in fact was one city where it was randomly selected among the applicants which ones would get it, except that ones who had been approved before got preference, which is the sort of grandfather clause that's almost expressly meant to favor Christianity in these policies.
Yes.
A very troubling case. And we'll see how that comes out in May or June. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all good. And of course, the city might do what a lot of schools do, where they say, oh, no, anyone is welcome to come and hand out leaflets like these people handing out Bibles and Christian tracts. Anyone can do it. And the day the Satanists show up, they say, we've now just ended the policy. And so now there is not a situation of an unfair implementation, because the policy just got canceled, and that's independent, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, of the Satanists showing up. But yeah, same game.
And we've actually pointed that out to the court a few times in prior cases, particularly in amicus briefs. There was a case involving bus ads where...
yes, we're going way back now, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going back a few years. Where, they, in this one instance, they received an ad from a sort of end times group. And we're like, oh, we don't like that. Let's just end the program. And we were pointing out to them, look, this is what happens to minority religious groups and atheists, where, the government will learn that some disfavored group wants to take part in a program, and they'll just take their ball and go home and think that, well, that's the end of it. But there's a hostility at the root of that kind of thing that is troublesome. So a city can, of course, end a policy that it institutes. It just has to be under the right circumstances and not be engaging in discrimination.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent stuff. And, of course, listeners, you can go check out AmericanAtheists.org and read all kinds of news and stories there. The other thing, of course, we want to talk about, Jeff, is the upcoming conference in April, in the middle of April for Easter weekend. What can you share with us about the American Atheist Conference this year, which is, the first time in 1, 2, 3 years ago? Because we missed two full years.
We were in Cincinnati in 2019. We had to cancel the 2021 about a month beforehand for obvious reasons. And then we did have an excellent virtual convention last year. We all had a lot of fun doing that, and we were able to bring speakers from a wide area geographically that maybe would not have been able to attend. And of course, virtually people can attend even if they couldn't go to a particular city. This year, though, the plan is, and it looks pretty good. Obviously, we can't account for COVID's whims, but we are holding our in-person convention for the first time since 2019. It's going to be in Atlanta this year from April 15th through 17th. We always hold it Easter weekend because our people generally aren't doing anything that weekend.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it turns out convention space is super cheap. So it's in Atlanta. We're bringing in a lot of speakers from the region, a lot of speakers from the South that very often, may not get as well heard as they should be. But then we also have a number of staples of the atheist community speaking. Seth Andrews is going to be there, Mandisa Thomas, Aaron Ra. I think Matt Dillahunty is going to do a magic show. We're going to do a panel on atheists running for office, and members of the Association of Secular Elected Officials will be participating in that, so that should be really interesting. And in general, the convention's going to obviously focus on science and our advocacy efforts and things like that, but we're also going to talk some about abortion, reproductive rights, especially in light of some of the stuff that's been going on at the Supreme Court and in Texas this year, and talking about atheists running for and winning office, because that's really important, especially at the local level where we've got evangelical Christians taking over school boards and whatnot.
Absolutely. And it looks like here that the entire conference, sorry to cut you off here for a second, just so everyone knows, $249. And if you contact American Atheists and you sign up for silver, gold, or platinum life member, you might be able to qualify for some free tickets, so you could check that out. And of course, I'm sure someone would allow you to donate extra money to help offset the costs for people that maybe aren't doing as well as you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, on that front, area residents in the Atlanta area and students and whatnot generally get a discounted price. And this year, I believe it is $99. So there is that, and the other thing that I wanted to mention. With regard to COVID and its whims, I do want to make sure I mention that we are requiring vaccinations across the board. We're not permitting any exceptions, even in the instance of if someone is medically unable to get a vaccine. I feel for people who are in that position, but we want to make sure that everyone is as safe as possible.
What if I want a religious exemption?
No. No religious exemptions, no philosophical exemptions. Get the vaccine, please.
Yes.
We're also going to be requiring masks, and we'll update people on this as things inevitably develop and morph into new and interesting circumstances.
Very nice. And I see here events. Actually, Thursday in the evening, there's the pub quiz and game night. So if you can get to the, Atlanta early enough, you can have some fun Thursday night. But Friday is not a slough day. There's speakers in the morning and the afternoon, all day Friday, all day Saturday. Let's see here. Sunday, some morning stuff, and then a community service project afternoon. Is that going to be a food bank kind of thing? Do you know?
I believe so, but don't quote me on that because I haven't been involved in those conversations. But that's what it generally is. And I say that's what it generally is, but especially in pandemic situations, we may not want to be handling a bunch of food. So I'm not entirely sure what that would consist of. I'm sure someone knows, but I don't happen to be aware of what the community service project will consist of.
Fair enough. I'm just looking at the venue. It's the Renaissance Atlanta Waverly Hotel and Convention Center. If a name is not long enough, that might be it. And I love this fact that it's within walking distance of Truist Park. And I recently redid my home mortgage with SunTrust, now Truist, which cracks me up every fucking time. They send me a letter because they have their old logo and then now Truist. And I go, well, if it's now Truist, why do you tell me it's now Truist? Why isn't it just on the letterhead? But that's weird shit for me. What else should we know about the convention?
Well, there's a lot more information that you can find at the website for the convention, convention.atheists.org. That's convention.atheists.org. And there's all sorts of information on there. And we look forward to seeing people. You mentioned that it'll be a vacation. Obviously, for members of staff, it's not a vacation, but it does,
yes,
it does provide a sort of shot in the arm that we get once a year that is, especially right now, much needed, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I once had someone say, isn't this kind of like preaching to the choir? And I said, yeah, it's kind of like that, and I like it. It's good fun.
Community is important.
Yes, it is. And I know of all the conferences that I go to, the American Atheist one is probably the one that has the highest percentage of people that I know there. And, I don't know how many people are going to be there this year, but I plan on seeing a whole bunch of often longtime friends and making some new friends while I'm there. So that is absolutely fantastic. Is there anything else with the convention or the legal stuff that you want to make sure we get in before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I mean, I could talk about our litigation stuff for hours, but yeah, I look forward to seeing you, Phil, and having you. Like I've started doing at our conventions, having you and everybody else sign my Gideon Bible from my hotel room as a sort of yearbook.
Nice. I like it very much. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for taking time to come on the Phil Ferguson Show.
You're welcome, Phil. Thank you for having me.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. So I had to jump on the computer and record this little segment. And forgive me if I sound winded, because I am. I just finished my exercise, which I don't do a lot of, but I'm trying to do more. I was riding the bicycle and got done and saw that I had a voicemail and listened to it. And as a courtesy, I called back. Whew, yeah, I should have given it a few minutes here, but I didn't want to forget exactly what happened. So the person who called me and left me a very nice voicemail is a representative from a platform that helps advisors find annuities. They're kind of like an annuity broker, I guess, and they're not limited to one family or one brand. How they make money, I'm not quite sure, but of course they do, because why would you be in any business if your intention at least wasn't to make money? I guess someone could go differently, but whatever. And I happened to meet her at the golf outing that I went to a few months ago, and I made a segment on, actually I ended up making two segments on the annuities that they were talking about at that meeting. And she wanted to talk to me about the platform that they have and if I had a chance to look at it and blah, 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 blah. And I had told her this at the golf outing, but of course, people, and I'll include me, we often don't hear what we don't want to hear. And I was very upfront that I was there to learn new information, but I'm not really an annuity person. I don't use any annuities, and they're all like, that's fine. You're coming for information. Yay, go team. So she called this morning, left me the voicemail. I called her back and I said, let me start off with saying that I haven't looked at your platform. And to be honest, I'm not going to look at your platform. I just don't do annuities. And she said, why? Why don't you do annuities? And I said, because I can do math, and I know how they work. And she's like, well, I don't know what that means. And I said, well, I'll allow for the fact that I am possibly suffering from what's called self-selection bias, where the people that tell me about their annuities and how they've performed are the people who are in awful annuities and that complain about annuities and lost a ton of money. So there is that possibility. However, I have had conversations with people that sell annuities before, and when I start to describe how the math works inside of the annuities, like I've done on this podcast multiple times, I always get this response. Well, our annuities aren't like that. Well, of course they're not, because virtually every single annuity is unique. I mean, sure, one company can have a name for an annuity and all their agents sell thousands and thousands of versions of that one annuity, but you know what I mean. Effectively, they're all different. If you get presented with 5 different annuities, they've got 5 different schemes to separate you from your money. And maybe it's an overly negative view from my perspective, but that's where I am. And I was very upfront. One of the very first things I said, I don't do annuities, so I'm not going to look at your platform. And she said, well, give me an example. So I gave her an example. She goes, well, we don't do that. And I said, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll make you a deal. You go through your platform and you find the best annuity you can find that gives clients returns that are like the stock market. Because she was talking about, well, we can guarantee you 3 or 4 or 5% return, and the stock market can't do that, and bonds can't do that. So this is something different. And I go, I understand that it's different. And I understand the sales pitch. I get it. I understand the math, at least almost every one that I've ever looked at. But you're saying yours aren't like the examples that I gave. Cool. You go through your platform, pick one, and send it to me. But I want to be clear, I am going to do my level best to review it honestly and make a segment for my show where I will go over the mathematics of how it works and how it doesn't work. And she says, well, I could do that, but I don't want to waste your time by sending it to you if you're not really interested. And I said, oh, don't be like that. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, I just told you I'm interested in reviewing it. You have told me it's not like anything else that I've just mentioned, that it's different and it's not bad for the clients. So send it to me. I will review it and I will do a podcast segment on it, opinions positive or negative, because if it ends up being an annuity that I like, maybe I'll put some people in it and admit all along that not every single annuity is evil. And she said, well, it doesn't sound like you're really interested in using it. I was like, well, is that the excuse then you're going to give me? And she's like, it's not an excuse. And I said, you told me that your annuities aren't like the things I described and that they're good for clients. If you think that'll stand up to mathematical rigor, send it to me. Send me the details. I'll review it. No, clearly you're not interested. Okay, whatever. So we have that. So here's another person that gets paid by selling annuities that won't send me the data, the information, and the details about what they're selling because I'm not interested. No, that's not the real reason. It's because I told them I'm going to go through the mathematics rigorously, and clearly they understand that it's not good. It's not going to stand up to scrutiny. It's not going to stand up. And the last thing they need is some asshole like Phil going out to tens of thousands of people and saying brand X annuity. Here's the sales pitch. And then here's the rest of the story and how it doesn't work out. So that went nowhere fast, and it's kind of a bummer, but I was clear and upfront that I don't like annuities. Every one that I've ever looked at has been bad. I'll have one exemption. I'll allow. I do have one client that had a horrifically bad annuity, and we did do I don't know if it's called a rollover, but you know, like you can move money from your 401k to your IRA. You can move money from an annuity to another annuity, and there's not tax consequences because this person had this annuity for so long that if they pulled everything out, the tax bill would be cost prohibitive. So TIAA-CREF has a product for advisors where they actually just put you in index funds that perform pretty close to the market. And I think they get maybe like 0.8% or 1%. And then, of course, I get my cut for doing it. So I can't shy away from that I get paid for doing this too. But at least I'm straight up about it. Because at one point, this annuity lady... Oh, so sorry. Too many thoughts. This happens after exercise. Another reason not to do it. I'm thinking about too many things. The TIAA-CREF, while I would still never use it voluntarily, when compared to the other annuity that my client had, was wildly better. So there is that. But the person that I was talking to today was going over all the positives, of course, of annuities, and would not send me one. They would not go through their system and find the best one and send it to me with the knowledge in advance that I would review it and critique it. So take that for what you will. And then, of course, they said that they don't want to be a bother and they don't want to call me anymore because they're wasting my time. And I'm like, you're not wasting my time. I'll talk to you about this and I'll wait for an example. Well, I'm not going to send you one. Okay. So there's that. Just this quick little thing that just happened this morning. I thought you might like it. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you hanging out and listening to the show. A lot of the show topics I cover are ideas from listeners. So if you want to send in an idea, you can do that. Phil@PolarisFinancialPlanning.com. You can send me anything you want. I may or may not cover it depending on my mood or what's going on. Sometimes I do at least interesting to me, different subjects, but it's usually limited to politics, religion, and money. That's a lot of stuff. So we can go over all kinds of things if you want. Ask questions. If it's just something simple, I can give you the answer. Just as a reminder, follow up to previous episodes. Because of changing regulations from the Department of Labor, where they have declared that any advisor recommending that you move your money from your 401k to an IRA, where that advisor, a la Phil, as an example, would then collect a fee, which I do, because it's a business, you got to make money, to give you advice. They have to, to start with, and it's a weird way of doing this, it's currently called a prohibited transaction. It's just not allowed. It's not allowed for me to do that unless I file for an exemption. And that's where I'm not 100% up to speed on what qualifies as an exemption and what different things and circumstances might make one situation qualify and another one doesn't qualify, because there's not a committee that you submit your exception to. You just have to keep records, and they decide later when you get audited if you qualified for an exemption. So I'm not a whole lot interested in fucking around with that. So if you call me and say, hey, Phil, should I move my 401k over to you? For now, at least, I'm going to have to say, I can't recommend that. And then you'll go, what? And I'll give you all the reasons. If, on the other hand, you have a job and you've switched the job, or the job has ended, or you have a new job or whatever, and you have a 401k, and you have an advisor, whether it's Phil or Fidelity or Schwab or T. Rowe Price or John Hancock or whatever, they're going to have some kind of bullshit that they're going to have to go through too. If you want to have them manage that money for you, you would send to them an email saying something like, hey, advisor at Edward Jones, you manage my other stuff. I have this 401k. I'm going to roll it over to an IRA, and I want you to manage it. That way, the advisor is not recommending anything to you. You are giving instructions to your advisor at what you want to do. So just something to think about or be aware of if your advisor is a little weird about talking to you about your 401k money. And the other side effect of that, I think for me, and maybe I'm being overly conservative, but I'm okay with that for me. For more than 20 years, maybe close to 25 years, I have given free advice to clients and non-clients, by the way. This whole show is free. I've given free advice for people on their 401ks and what they should invest within their 401k. That is also on hold. I am not doing that at this time at all, even for paying clients. I considered it as a nice gesture, as a free service to clients, with the clearly obvious possibility that if you do better in your 401k, and when you eventually change jobs and you roll more money over and your account is bigger, my fee is bigger. So I'm not completely doing it 100% for your benefit. There is a possibility I could make more money doing that by helping you also. However, that would make the exemption much more harder to justify to do a prohibited transaction. So if I'm giving you advice for free on how to invest part of your money, and now you have to pay me, you get where I'm going? It might make it harder for an outside third party to support the claim that I have qualified for the exemption. It's so stupid. Anyway, I really hope you like the show, and the ending segment there, the annuity platform thing, that just cracked me up. Well, one of the things I didn't mention that was on our quick phone call when I was talking about how people lose money and the expenses and everything, she said something like, it doesn't cost the clients any money. And I was like, oh, don't do that. She's like, what? If they put money into a fixed annuity that promises 5% and they get 5%, they're not out anything. Okay. Well, I wouldn't say it that way. I would say they're getting the promised deal, right? But are they out money? Are they out money that they could have made? Yeah. And to kind of paint it, and I've heard people, especially in the insurance industry, do this before, to paint it as if it doesn't cost them anything. There's always a cost, whether it's opportunity cost, or just, the fees that are involved if you have some kind of indexed annuity. There's always costs. And that is proven out by the fact that insurance companies make a lot of money. And as we've talked about on the show, sometimes they make more money off your money than you make off your money. That's a pretty cool deal, honestly. I guess that would be up there with religion. If I was ever going to go rogue and wanted to make a lot of money without honor and without decency, I would start a religion or create an insurance company and sell people annuities, because that's real money. So anyway, plenty of fun stuff we've already had for today. Next episode, I promise I will. It's the 16-year review of the 4 different styles of investing, and I know you're going to like that, and I've had a lot of people ask for that because I've done that once each year. I will not do it more frequently because I don't know what value it has, and it gets hard. It's a lot of work and numbers to think about. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up, and hopefully maybe for Easter, right? That's only a couple months away. I'll see you in Atlanta for the American Atheists Conference. Until then, ciao.
Turning water into wine, so delicious. JC always does it right. That vicious, driving around in his ride, getting be less. Now I'm feeling so fly, like Jesus, like Jesus, like Jesus. Now I'm feeling so fly, like Jesus, like Jesus. Now I'm feeling so fly, like Jesus.
Give me that Momo sis. Give me that Chris and Chris. Ladies love my hair and my cross is what they wear. Get them bottles popping. We got that faith and that love. Now give them 2 more bottles, cause you know I'm a bug. Baby like hell bad. Bring it up, bring it up. When seeing the girls around me, they be acting like they none. Acting like they none, baby, acting like they none. Seeing the girls around me, they be acting like they none.
Turning water into wine, so delicious. JC always does it right. That vicious, driving around in his ride, getting be less. Now I'm feeling so fly, like Jesus, like Jesus, like Jesus. Now I'm feeling so fly, like Jesus, like Jesus.